Hi friends, in today's podcast, I'm going to be sharing some of my early experiences with Teacher Lu Xia. So 2019, of course every single year there's a lot of things that happen in our life, likewise for 2019. But there were 4 key incidents that happened in 2019 that I think I wanted to share about. And first thing was, 2019 was when I got over my first breakup. Secondly, 2019 was also when I did a very interesting career ritual that helped me to expand my career overseas. Thirdly, 2019 was also when I got myself into a first 6-figure debt and how I got out of it. And also 2019, towards the end of the year, was when my own brother actually had a spirit following him. So I'm going to be sharing these different experiences and stories in this podcast, and hope that the different learning pointers within it can help you. So first, regarding getting over my very first breakup ever. So I got into my first relationship in 2018, and the interesting thing was that 2018, Teacher Lu Xia actually told me not to get into the relationship, right? But of course, things just happen, and in the middle part of the year, I got myself in a relationship organically. At a point in time, I thought that, maybe things have changed because it's been a while since I met with Teacher Lu Xia. So perhaps 6 months in or this couple of months in, my energy view has changed. So perhaps this outcome would be different if I get into a relationship now. Of course, long story short, it turned out to be otherwise and broke up towards the end of 2018. So definitely I remember, crying in the shower and things like that. I'm just feeling sad, not for a very long time, thankfully, and it's also because of the help of Teacher Lu Xia. I remember that I was basically very sad for just 2 weeks, and then I just got completely over it. I guess 2 things helped me during that period. The first thing was I started going online and search up on different quotes, different wisdom quotes. That one helped me a little bit with the perspective side of things. Right? With all these different quotes, I shifted my mental perspective a bit with regards to the situation, and it helped me a little. And secondly was, coincidentally, at the start of 2019, Teacher Lu Xia was in Singapore, so I did an impromptu ritual with her to boost my energy at the start of the year. And of course, at the start of that year, I also happened to consult her, right, for the new year ahead. I guess it's both. During the consultation, speaking with Teacher Lu Xia, the energy that she transmitted to me, as well as doing the energy boosting ritual itself, it really helped me to get out of that inner confine, or whatever you want to call it. It was so good that after the 2 weeks period, I was completely back in a positive state again. So I got over it to the extent that I really found that I was able to forgive the other party and even become friends and get into good terms again with the other party. And of course, with these very strong positive energies that Teacher Lu Xia infused in me, I also then not only got out of this negative energy state, but I was also filled with positive energy, right? Which is why I was able to adopt a more positive perspective. Because our energy state, what is the energy in our mind predominantly, will determine how we think and how we see things. So if your mind is filled with negative energy, especially for instance after a breakup, your perspective is just stuck in that negative zone, you generate a lot of negative energy. So you're just stuck there. So if you remove this negative energy, so perhaps another aspect is, with this strong infusion of positive energy, the negative energy that was in my mind was also dispelled and replaced with positive energy in the mind. And so with my mind filled with positive energy, I was able to just let go of things completely and go in a positive state again, to the extent where, like I mentioned, I was also able to, come to a closure, forgive the other party, and even be able to take the step of seeing the party as a friend, a normal friend again. So that was one of the very interesting experiences at a point in time where the help of energy really helped me to get out of that situation. The second key thing that happened in 2019 was a very interesting career ritual that I did. So what happened was, at a point in time, I was doing full-time sales in a tech company. Because of the nature of the business, we had to travel a lot to different countries. And I started traveling a lot since the end of 2018, when the company had different activities in different countries: China, Taiwan, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, things like that. And I always realized one thing, which was the end of 2018 to the middle of 2019 itself, the 6 months period, I traveled 5 times to different countries. And I noticed one consistent pattern, which was that every time I went overseas, I just somehow felt very tired. I was kind of back in that energy state before I knew Teacher Lu Xia, where I can get enough sleep, logically, for most people, 8 to 9 hours. I'll still wake up feeling tired and lethargic. So when it happened the first few times, I didn't think much about it. I just thought that, it's just like the travel exhaustion or whatever you want to call it. But after, 5 times, that's where I felt that, something wasn't right with it. So then sometime in May, Teacher Lu Xia was in Singapore then. So I decided to ask her this. In fact, the very interesting thing is that I realized, I really noticed that on the flight back to Singapore, when I'm in the air, midway coming back to Singapore, I start to feel more energized again. At first, I thought it was like a placebo effect or whatever you want to call it. But it happened a few times. So I was like, this is a bit strange. strange. So I told Teacher Lu Xia this, and then she said that, oh, it's because, yes, although you did an energy boosting ritual with me last year, 2018, the first time I knew her, but that energy field was more suited for you in the Singapore market. So it's kind of like your energy field when you're in Singapore is high, but when you're overseas, then you go back to kind of like your original energy field before you did this energy boosting thing. So it's kind of like lower, which is why you feel this lethargy. And I was like, oh, I see. So I asked Teacher Lu Xia, is there a solution? Because at that point in time, our company was expanding overseas, right? So I was traveling a lot and I wanted to travel to different countries to expand the sales. And so Teacher Lu Xia said that, okay, it's possible. We can perhaps do a ritual to help to synchronize your energy field with these different countries that you want to expand to. So that when you are there in these different countries, you know, your energy will be higher, just like in the Singapore market. So without second thought, I decided to go ahead and do the ritual because you can't let this factor stop your career expansion, right? And long story short, went through the typical process of preparing for the ritual. During the ritual ceremony itself, there was a step where Teacher Lu Xia asked me to visualize the different countries that I wanted to expand and go into for my work. Basically, I visualized all the Southeast Asian nations, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, so on and so forth, China, USA. These were the main countries I visualized. The very interesting thing happened the next day after the ritual. So at that point in time, the way that I generated leads and got my potential customers was a very standard method. I used it for like many months, which is that I go to a certain platform and I have a certain advertising script that I use. It's kind of like the same script every single time. So the same advertising script, the same platform, I post it there, and then consistently I've been getting leads from there. It's a very consistent flow. All this while, most of the leads that came to me were prospective customers in the Singapore market. So it's very interesting. Many months, same platform, same copy, same demographic of leads, basically Singapore. After I did the ritual, I think 1 or 2 days later when I went back to work, same thing, ran the same advertising, used the same advertising script, and this time, the first 3 leads from the advertising campaign that came to me, it was amazing. First, there was a lead who did business in many of the different countries that I visualized during the ritual. I remember he was doing business in like many parts of Southeast Asia, China and things like that. And for the second lead, he was someone that had a mixed blood family line. Like his wife was a Thai and his grandparents were like mixed from different countries, and his family line was like very mixed of different nationalities. So he had connections in these different areas that he could potentially introduce to me. And the third lead was a Vietnamese, like a pure Vietnamese. And this was the first Vietnamese person I ever know in my life. I have never ever had any Vietnamese person ever even sign up for the form or like even reach out, let alone get to the process of having a sales appointment. So it's very amazing because the contrast was very huge. Same sales script, same advertising script, same platform used, but the type of leads, especially the country, the main difference was the country that they came from was so different. You know, thereafter, I went to travel again. The different countries I went to after I did the ritual was Taiwan, Vietnam, and Malaysia. Taiwan and Malaysia, I went there before I did this ritual. So, you know, I felt the lethargy before that, right? But this time around, when I went back to Taiwan and Malaysia, and I went to Malaysia quite often, I no longer felt that lethargy. I felt the same as I am in Singapore, very energetic. So it was a very interesting career energy boosting ritual I did. Of course, after knowing Teacher Lu Xia, this was yet again another reinforcement for me as to her abilities, as to the wonders of energy and how it really helps us in all aspects of our life. And for me, it was for career. On the additional note, if you want to move into a new country, like migrate there or expand our business there or work there, we also have to see which territories are more suitable for us, right, energetically. You know, which country's energy field is compatible with our energy field, so that when we go there, we can maximize the upsides and not face or minimize the downsides. And of course, if it's a problem that can be solved, like in my case, then of course what I did was an energy ritual to just reattune my energy field so that it's compatible with these different countries that I was going into. So that was the second memorable encounter that I had with Teacher Lu Xia in 2019. The third experience that I have was getting into a close to 6-figure debt. So at the point in time, yes, I was doing full-time sales. But the thing was also, I was in a full-time commission role as well. So I don't receive a basic salary at all. And at the point in time when I first got into the debt, the 6-figure debt, it was very stressful, right? Because I was only 24 years old then, haven't crossed my birthday. It was a pretty stressful experience having to get into that situation at such a young age. So it led me to the situation where every single prospect I met, everything that was on my mind was how do I close this deal and earn enough money so that I can pay off these debts of mine. And of course, you know, when you're in that state of desperation, when your mind is fixated on all these negative scenarios, the stress, the desperation, it's a negative energy state that you're in, right? You're also generating negative energy for yourself. Negative energy in your mind, in your whole entire field. And so because of this negative energy, naturally your luck will not be good. And so very predictably, looking back, the first 2 months I was in this state after getting into debt. And things just didn't work out. You know, I basically had close to 0 sales in that 2 months. Perhaps you can say that the negative energy field that I developed just repelled all these good opportunities or potential good things away from me. A few things happened at that point in time, right? First thing was I self-reflected on the situation. I self-reflected and I looked inwards. I found out that firstly, you know, when you end up in a problem, you want to always know what is the root cause of the problem. What got you into the problem in the first place? And after knowing the root cause, it can perhaps help you to extract yourself out of the situation and or secondly, avoid you from getting into future similar situations down the road. And of course, I identified very clearly after self-reflection that, you know, the root cause of the problem was my greed at that point in time. So greed got me to get into this 6-figure debt. And you just come to this enlightenment that, yeah, you know, it's your own greed and you deserve it. It's all because of your greed. So you got to learn from this lesson. Otherwise, something worse will happen down the road to remind and teach you of this lesson again. I guess one of my blessings was that I naturally acquired the trait to self-reflect, told myself that no, I cannot be in such a state for a prolonged period of time because I know it's not going to get anywhere. And furthermore, at the point in time, I knew Teacher Lu Xia. I started to read some of her books. I understood about negative energy. It will not help us with our situation, our luck and things like that. So I knew that I had to get out of that state. And so after much of an inner dialogue, I kind of came to a realization that I have to remember my original intentions. When I first started off doing sales, I was very self-focused. All I cared about was how do I close the deal, increase my income just for myself. And I kind of got myself in the same cycle where I was in the 2019 period after I got myself into 100,000 debt, where things just didn't turn out well. You know, even though I might close a sale, but the retention wasn't there. So it's like you take an effort, you have a result, and then it just dies down over there. It's not sustainable. So after 1.5 years in the state and through certain encounters, I started to shift my inner perspective and I started to become more outward focused. And long story short, through a series of encounters, I came to this awakening whereby I just became more focused on the well-being and success of others, my team members, my clients, instead of previously just fully on myself. And it was that state that helped me to grow my business, to grow my sales, to grow my career rather exponentially and earn me my first 5-figure paycheck. And so in that debt period, I suddenly remembered about this first success that I had and the intention that I adopted that allowed me to have that first breakthrough. And so I reminded myself that yes, I got to return back to this initial intention of placing the client's interest as a priority, truly wanting the best for them and truly saying things and doing things that's for the best of them. And on the 3rd month, that's exactly what I did. Every single client that I met, I entered into this mental state of thinking and prioritizing for what is best for them, to the extent that when what my company has to offer isn't to the best of their interests, I'll just straight away stop the deal over there. And so with that state and that way of doing things, just that month alone, my closing rate shot up exponentially, and somehow that month, more quality leads came in and I basically cleared close to 2/3 of my debt just in that 1 month alone. And so that whole entire experience really taught me a lot, right? It first taught me about the importance of constant self-reflection and introspection, something that Teacher Lu Xia always tells students like myself, right? We always got to self-reflect and look inwards to see where we contributed to it. And secondly, it reminded me of not forgetting my original intention of placing my priority in helping others become better. And recently, as I was translating Teacher Lu Xia's latest book, there's one quote in a book that I like particularly a lot as well, which is that she said that money is not something that we earn by any means possible, but it should be a reward as a result of taking the right actions and doing good things. And the third wisdom that incident taught me was the Mandarin quote, 心定万事定, something that Teacher Lu Xia usually shares as well. So the opposite is true, right? When your inner state is turbulent, then everything on the outside will be turbulent as well. But when the inner state is calm and settled, everything else on the outside will settle. You'll take care of yourself and there'll be calmness, i.e. things will be okay and smooth. So that was the third memorable incident that happened in 2019. And the last one, also a very interesting story, discovering that my own brother, my younger brother, actually had a spirit attached onto him. So what happened was that 2017 basically, both of us, we went to stay with our grandma because at that point in time our parents were shifting house and the new location that they found was just very far from our previous place and our schools and all that kind of thing. In 2018, I decided to move in and stay with my parents because my office at that point in time was closer to where my parents lived in, while my brother brother continued to stay with my grandma because at the time he was still schooling, right? So his school was nearer to my grandma's place, relatively. About a year and a half, we didn't really meet one another so often, except for the weekends where he just came over to my parents' place to just relax and things like that. Start of 2019 was when he first entered into poly, where he had a long break. So he moved in to my parents' place, the new place, and he started to stay there. The holiday was like 1 month, right? So 1 month we were back together again and stayed for a longer period of time together. So a few funny things happened. So every morning, at a point in time, I meditated daily. It's an energy meditation by Teacher Lu Xia. All of a sudden, 1 week, suddenly for many days straight, whenever I was meditating, I started to just fall asleep. You know, feel very tired and like, you just fall asleep during meditation. And I'll get sinus, so I will have like mucus coming out of my nose and things like that, which I kind of suspected was a form of detox. It's like lethargy in terms of like perhaps, you know, some negative energy affecting you and so you feel more drained, and mucus coming out during the meditation as a form of detox. And obviously I know it's not just a normal sinus because it happened for a couple of days in a row. Another thing that also happened was I noticed that at a point in time I started to become more temperamental. Like, you know, when my teammates came in late for a meeting, I'll just suddenly get very pissed off, and or they don't turn up for a certain company function, I'll just get very upset and angry in a way that I kind of couldn't control. So a part of my mind knows that yeah, it's no big deal, you know, they probably have their reasons, family commitments or personal reasons, but I just felt very upset that things didn't go my way in a way that I couldn't control. And that feeling, I had it once before, and that was in 2018 where I unknowingly got some item that basically had a spirit in it. I got an item because I wanted to improve my luck. That was what the person who sold me that told me. But long story short, after more than half a year, coincidentally by affinity through Teacher Lu Xia, I got to know that the item actually contained a spirit, which wasn't good for me. And he also explained why in 2018, there were bouts of moments where I'll just get very angry and I just couldn't control my temper and I'll just like lash out. And I followed Teacher Lu Xia in her energy meditation. So I've been consistently, together with the energy rituals and all, elevating my energy. So it helped me to get into a state of like calmness and inner stillness. So at a point in time, in the late 2019, I already kind of got in sync with the state of like inner peace and calmness and tranquility. So for me to suddenly have that similar bout of uncontrollable anger that I had in 2018 when I had the item, I kind of grew a bit suspicious. By coincidence, at that point in time, yeah, Teacher Lu Xia was still in Singapore, and at that point in time, I kind of recruited my brother to do part-time sales with me for his benefit, right? I told him that, hey, you should go and see my spiritual teacher, get a live reading and get to know what your future holds ahead for you. So my brother went to the consultation by himself, and when he came back, he told me what Teacher Lu Xia told him, the good stuff, and he said that, whoa, Teacher Lu Xia told me that I have a spirit that's following me. And then I was like, no wonder I've been feeling all this while. And then I was like, no can do. Of course, I spoke to Teacher Lu Xia about this issue, about my brother having the entity that's following him. And then Teacher Lu Xia said that, yes, of course, the entity is only attached onto him, it's not attached onto me. But because we are living in such close proximity, we share the same room, over time, this spirit that's on him, which is a form of negative energy, will start to also affect me. And of course, at that point in time, I was really feeling it, right? In terms of like the lethargy, the uncontrollable negative emotions. So I told my brother that you have to go and settle it. Okay, of course, at that point in time, he was still a student, he didn't have much money. So I paid for his ritual. I paid for him, at the point in time I recall it was like 3.6 or 3.9k. So I said, it's okay, let me pay for you, just go and get it settled. So he did the ritual. At the point in time, my brother was only 17 years old. During his school holiday, he'll sleep all the way till like 11 AM. When he wakes up, he will play his mobile phone games. Typical, right? Nothing surprising. Of course, at that point in time, he joined me in doing sales, so I wanted to grow his mindset, right? So I told him that, hey, you know, I know it's a holiday, it's okay for you to still wake up and, you know, enjoy yourself a little bit, but can you start to be just a little bit more disciplined? Maybe when you wake up, you read some books, maybe you kind of schedule your sleep cycle better, don't wake up so late, and can you maybe set some goals for yourself for the week? He actually agreed. All these different points he agreed, but when it came to the actual action, it just didn't materialize. So long story short, he did the ritual, and the next day after the ritual, something very out of the ordinary happened. It wasn't exactly the next day, okay, but it's close enough. It was like 2 to 3 days after the ritual. One day he just woke up and he just started to go to like networking apps himself, like meetup.com, you know, Eventbrite, and he just started to search for different like business events that he could go to get lead and things like that. And I didn't even suggest to him all these different ideas, right? He just took the initiative to research and get to it. And at the point in time, we were selling a high ticket item that was like in the tens of thousands of dollars range. So long story short, he took the initiative to search for these different events, went to it, network, and just that week alone, that 1 week after the ritual, he managed to connect to a few higher profile people, and that high ticket item that I talked about, us selling as a company, it was a new product. So at that point in time, in my whole entire sales team, no one, including myself, has closed the sale yet. And my brother, 1 week after his ritual, he went to these different networking events, he got to know these different contacts. He invited some of them to our sales seminar. In that sales seminar, he closed 2 cases of the 5-digit ticket item. You know, he was the first in the team, he even did it before me, and he has never done all the actions that he did before, let alone connecting to these people and being able to talk to them. 17-year-old talking to 40-plus-year-old, 50-plus-year-old, people who are way more successful than you. And he started to become more focused and driven. It was 180 degrees change. It's not even an exaggeration when I say it. From then on, he became very focused, just matured a lot. So that was the very amazing transformation. Of course, it wasn't a career energy boosting ritual. It was only a spirit removal and cleansing ritual. You know, of course, during such rituals, Teacher Lu Xia will remove these spiritual entities, this spirit that's following a person, removing this negative energy from them. There's a quote that Teacher Lu Xia shares in her upcoming book, which is that if negative energy doesn't leave, then positive energy cannot enter. So likewise, even when it comes to, for instance, unlocking of our subconscious mind contains vast amounts of wisdom and energy. Above our subconscious mind, we have our conscious mind. So if the conscious mind is filled with negative energy, then the energy and wisdom within the subconscious cannot flow out, because it's like this passageway that is leading from the subconscious to the conscious is blocked by all this negative energy. So the energy is just stuck there. So when we remove this negative energy, this wisdom and this energy from the subconscious can now start to flow out, which was also probably why after removing this spirit, there was lesser negative energy that was obstructing this pathway for my brother, and so more of the wisdom within his subconscious mind started to flow out, and that was why he matured like 10 years after just that ritual, and his actions was just very different for someone who's a regular 17-year-old. And of course, during these spirit removal rituals, Teacher Lu Xia will also infuse and replenish some positive energy in the person. So yes, that was another very memorable experience in 2019. I'll say that these different experiences in 2019 was what made me really not only grow myself, but also really reaffirm my belief in cosmic energy and its efficacy in improving our human lives in all these different areas. So there you go. I hope the sharings in this podcast was insightful. Hope that it makes it more digestible, relatable and understandable. We hope to bring more of this wisdom in the form of real life stories of actual people to all of you. So stay tuned for the future podcasts, and thank you so much for listening.